Ain't no one use it. In this video, I'm going to be giving you my 5 top tips for choosing the colours to paint your miniatures. Let's get straight into it. Top tip number 1 is to use a colour wheel. I'm sure you've seen a colour wheel in the past, and unsurprisingly, this is a circular shape with lots of colours on it, and its primary role is to show you how all the different colours interact. Now, a colour wheel is made up of primary, secondary and tertiary colours, so let's have a look how we can apply this to miniature painting. Primary colours are the basic colours that can't be created by mixing other colours. They're red, blue and yellow. Secondary colours are created by mixing primary colours, orange, green and purple. Finally, we have tertiary colours created by mixing a primary and a secondary colour. They're yellow-orange, red-purple, blue-green and yellow-green. The colour wheel can help you find colours which complement each other. So for example, if we have a look at the wheel, complementary colours are those opposites. So for example, you've got blue opposite, that's yellow. And if you think about the Ultramarines, Games Workshop's poster boys for Space Marines, they're mainly blue, but they've got that gold trim, which, you know, gold is yellow. And essentially, they're complementary colours, which is why it looks so striking on all the box art. Additionally, you can use the colour wheel to find analogous colours, which are colours that are next to each other on the wheel. Analogous colours create a nice harmonious look and are great for shading and highlighting. You can see how using this swatch works on this example of the Genestealer Cult Patriarch, on both the chitin and the flesh, and even the red highlights on this Custodes cloak. In fact, when you think about paint ranges and how they have a base, a shadow and a highlight colour, this is exactly what they're doing to make it really simple, if not costly for the average painter. Note also that there's no black or white on the colour wheel. These are achromatic colours. For example, if you darken any colour right down, it'll be black. And if you brighten any colour to its maximum value, it'll be white. And that's why black and white go with just about any other colour. Top tip number 2 is using a limited palette. A limited palette is used to create a specific look or feel when it comes to your miniatures. By limiting the number of colours you use, you can really create a nice cohesive force that look great on the tabletop. Using a limited palette can help in colour choice by creating consistency, and this is really important when thinking about painting an entire army. For example, look at my Horus Heresy Imperial Fists, which I painted in 10 hours. It's an extremely limited palette, basically yellow, but you can really see the consistency across the units, and this even translates into vehicles. A limited palette also really helps when it comes to choosing a paint. I mean, how many different paints are there per brand, and how many brands times paints, and my brain will explode from trying to do those maths. It just does not compute. But by just picking a small limited palette, you can really cut down on the amount of paint you need, which of course is going to save you money and space, and who doesn't want more money and more space? You can see on these Renegade Guardsmen how I've used a limited palette of 6 or 7 contrast paint to create really nice consistency and interest across the models. Now, I've done this using what's called Grisaille, or more recently coined Slap Chop, where you spray them black, spray them white from above, and then use contrast paint to colour them in essentially. And this gives you really nice consistency, but on a very limited colour basis. Finally, a limited palette will really help you become a better painter. As you learn how different kinds of paint interacts and how adding and subtracting different colours can help you with value, saturation, you'll actually start to improve and get a greater knowledge of how colour works and interacts together. So this is a really good way of improving your ability and knowledge as a painter. Top tip number 3 is to simply copy. Now, the best place to find inspiration for schemes you may like or may want to copy is the internet. And if you're watching this, good news, you're already there. You don't have to go anywhere except maybe Instagram or maybe to Games Workshop itself. I mean, just think about the Games Workshop website. There are so many different colour schemes for so many different items on there that you could get lost just looking at all the little intricacies. Similarly, get on Instagram, find some painters that you really like, and then ask them how they did things, and most of them will be more than happy. Just check through the comments to make sure that they haven't already answered the question about 50 times already. In the case of Warhammer models, you can also use the recipes on the back of the boxes, but be careful. Sometimes they lie. They lie! Ain't nobody using auric armor gold to paint these lads. For those of you still with me and keeping count, this is tip number 4, and that is to use contrast. Not necessarily contrast paint, but contrast to create interest on your models. This is a really powerful tool when used correctly. Using a variety of colours on different areas of the miniature can create really good contrast. For example, using a dark colour on the shadows and a light colour on the highlights, which can create a nice sense of depth. Additionally, using warm and cool colours together can also create contrast. Check out this White Scar Space Marine. Nice and cold white armour and a really nice and warm red base that creates great contrast on the miniature. Different textures also create fantastic contrast, particularly in models that have a wide range of materials. check out how the different materials on Mosrag Scradbad work to create contrast on the model. The metal, clothing and flesh all have a different material feel to it. Finally, when creating contrast, we can talk about actual contrast paints. We talked earlier about how using them over a zenithal highlight can help. Well, check out these Space Marines done over just that. The red and green benefits from having darker shadows on lower areas, and you can manipulate this further by only placing highlights on the uppermost areas like I've done here. My fifth and final tip is to experiment and have some fun. It's a hobby after all. Now, I get a lot of questions because I've done a lot of videos with lots of different paints and colours, and people are always asking, oh, can I use this paint instead, or what will this look like? My advice is always the same. Take some of your spare parts on the sprue, prime them and try what you want to do. And then you'll have your answer, because as much as I love painting and I've got some good experience, I don't know everything about every single paint. And whilst I try to maintain an air of professionalism on the channel, there have been lots of, shall we say, happy accidents when it comes to some of the painting that I film and then put into my tutorials. So let's have a look at some of those to kind of back up what I'm saying. Firstly, the molten flesh on this avatar was born out of a thought process, something along the lines of, yellow contrast paint over a white base should be fine, shouldn't it? Similarly, on Bellico's sword, I just kind of guessed the colours would work, and I'm really grateful that they did. And my point is this, don't be afraid to give something a go if you think it will work. You're always learning in this hobby and developing your craft, and after all, even if it does go wrong, you can always paint over it. And there we have it, my top 5 tips for picking the colours to paint your miniatures. And here is a bonus 6th tip. And that is, as I say in all my videos, take your time and enjoy yourself. It's your Warhammer, paint it however you want. A huge thank you to all my patrons for keeping this channel rolling every week. You really do make all the difference. And if you want to see some of these tips in action, check out my other content here. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.